Do you know what your greatest fear is? I do. Perhaps better than you know yourself. Madness. Picture a man in a straitjacket. Imagine the fear in his eyes as he struggles. Madness is the loss of everything. Madness is the loss of you and everything you are, were, or will be. Imagine this very same man on a stage. This man isn't mad. He's a magician, an escapologist. You see what I did there? It made you think this was a story about a madman, a lunatic. But in actual fact, it's a story about a magician. And you know what that's called? Misdirection. I misdirected you like a bent sign or a drunk Trevor Nunn. This man right here is Solomon Seckerson, magician. When he was a small boy, he practiced for hour upon hour, forcing cards, perfecting false shuffles, palming eggs, when he should have been studying or masturbating. Being a magician was all he ever wanted to be. He wanted to astound people, frighten people, make them gasp and wonder what was real and what was not. At 25, he made his first professional appearance. Hackneyed tricks and nervous fingers should have made this show a disaster, but the audience in the crumbling theatre could see the sparkle in Solomon's eyes. Sitting in that audience was Ellen Prettle. When the show was over, she did not applaud, but she did loiter near stage door, waiting to see Solomon when he left. The other acts pushed past her, the otter juggler, the memory man, the guess your waiter, who was ironically on his way to his other job as an actual waiter. The last person to leave was Solomon Seckerson, and without waiting for an introduction, Ellen Prettle started a long and extremely negative critique of Solomon's show. These tricks are childishly simple, she said, and the Azra levitation was laughable, laughable. Some people would have found this tirade a little puncturing, but Solomon didn't. He was busy experiencing a different sort of magic. He was falling in love. And Ellen Prettle became Ellen Seckerson soon after. She loved Solomon and she loved magic. Her constant criticism would have galled some, but Solomon used it to make his magic better, and Ellen helped him build greater and more mysterious tricks. Together, they created a wonderful show. The tricks they created became famous all over the city, and then the whole country. Old Pumpkinhead, Bullet Soup, Cloudburst. These tricks were the envy of other magicians and the delight of audiences. Together, Ellen and Solomon were unstoppable. Until Solomon started to stop. There was no breaking point, no devastating incident, just a gradual drip, 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 drip of Solomon's love of magic falling away. And as we all know, it's hard to do something well when you don't like it. That's why no one asked me to do the washing up. Solomon went from the top of his game to the bottom. For Solomon, magic had lost its magic. His enthusiasm spasmed. His je ne sais quoi, c'était fini. And now we find ourselves in London, 1911. And Solomon, like a sewage worker, was simply going through the motions. Next up, the disappearing woman. Just a bog standard, nothing special, middle of the road, come as you are, pret-a-manger disappearing trick. Old Solomon would never have stooped to performing this sort of hackneyed affair, but those days were long gone. Audiences would still clap at a disappearing person, and the rent still needed paying. No amount of magic would make the bills disappear. May I have a volunteer from the audience? They must be brave, they must be fearless, and above all, they must believe. Solomon went through his well-worn patter with an almost total lack of conviction. No hands went up, no willing volunteers, no one who believed. Who could blame them? After all, he'd stopped believing many years ago. A hand went up in the gloom. The pretty hand, attached to a pretty arm, which was attached to, you've probably guessed, a pretty girl. Ah, a believer, please step this way. Solomon was not so dead inside that he didn't relish the thought of performing the trick with such a beautiful young woman. The trick progressed as everyone expected. The girl stepped inside the rather handsomely made cabinet. Solomon did the usual flourishes until there was no doubt at all in the minds of the audience that the girl was still inside the cabinet. There was also no doubt in their minds that the cabinet would have some compartment into which the pretty young audience member would be thrust for the disappearance. No surprises, no magic. Solomon locked the cabinet, giving his flourishes at about 45%. He flicked the tiny hidden lever that opened the secret door inside the cabinet, which would obscure the girl when he revealed the reveal. A little invention of Ellen's. How long since she'd seen him perform? 6 years? 7? Solomon raised his hands to open the cabinet when an electric lamp fell from the grid above the stage. It smashed to the floor, narrowly missing Solomon's head, but narrowly hitting his foot. He screamed out in pain, no words, just a deep and energetic howl of fury. He smashed the side of the cabinet, and suddenly, for the first time in years, things went unpredictable. There was a smell of sulfur and a crackle of light from inside the cabinet. A strange tone sounded for the briefest moment, so quiet you could almost not hear it, but so loud you could hear nothing but. Then the cabinet fell apart, the heavy wooden sides clattering to the floor. Inside the box was nothing but a swirling spiral of smoke. No girl. The audience, woken up by the lamp but amazed by this spectacular trick, were jolted into applause. Solomon did not turn to receive this applause, even though it had been many months since he had heard such spontaneous clapping, but simply stared at the cabinet and the already vanishing spiral of smoke. The cabinet was not supposed to fall apart. There was no smoke in his trick. He could see the secret compartment among the wreckage on the floor. The girl was not inside it. The girl had disappeared. For real. As soon as the audience left, he went back on stage and sorted through the timber that was once a cabinet. No trace of a girl. This was lunacy. He had to be hallucinating, dreaming, but it all seemed very real. He searched every inch of the building for a single sign of the girl. Nothing. And no one had seen her. It hadn't happened, had it? She hadn't really disappeared. She must have just run away when he wasn't looking. It all happened so fast. The lamp, the scream. Within minutes, he was out of the building and on his way home, an uneasy knot growing in the pit of his stomach. He entered the house where he and Ellen lived, a relic of a happier and more prosperous time. Ellen was still awake. "I hope you haven't been out all night drinking," she said. "I'm fine, how are you?" replied Solomon, pleased that they'd begun this uncomfortable section of late evening on such a sour note. He sat down at the kitchen table, the scrape of the chair legs on the tile causing his nerves to chatter. He stared straight ahead at the mantel clock, listening to the tick, tick, tick of his life passing by. "Something's wrong," said Ellen. "There's nothing wrong," said Solomon quietly, feeling accused. But he hadn't done anything wrong. "Solomon, there's nothing!" As he shouted, a chair slid across the room and smashed hard into the wall. "Are you sure?" Solomon told Ellen the whole story in a burbling, breathless mess. Ellen just looked at him. "Perhaps your mind was playing tricks on you. The audience saw it too. This happened." She could see in his eyes that at the very least, he believed it. Ellen began making a cup of tea. How could a woman just disappear? Perhaps she slipped away. Unlikely. Perhaps she was the victim of spontaneous human combustion. There was heat and smoke. Is that possible? I don't know. I don't know what's possible anymore. Ellen slid a cup of tea carefully across the table. Perhaps you should give up magic, Sol. Perhaps it's time to put the rabbit back in the hat. What do you mean? You've been doing it so long, you're starting to think that it's real. Don't be ridiculous, Ellen. Solomon's temper was quick to rise, and as he shouted, his teacup hurtled across the table. They stared at it in silence. Then Ellen picked it up and handed it to Solomon. "Just vibrations," she said. But neither of them believed it. Ellen turned to the sink and Solomon started to babble again. "I'm not mad, Ellen. Something is happening here. You saw it. What did I see? A teacup sliding across a table that's so crooked it should have been thrown out years ago? We can't pretend it didn't happen. You need to calm down." "Calm down!" roared Solomon. The dish Ellen was carrying shattered violently. The clock started to chime over and over. Ellen bent down to clear up the dish. Solomon knelt down and placed his hand on hers. She looked at him kindly. "We should go to bed. Things will seem better in the morning." Solomon had a restless night full of peculiar dreams. Dreams in which his body crackled with power and in which he could manipulate the world simply by thinking about it. They were woken early the next morning by a hammering on the door. Solomon was not entirely surprised to find 2 police officers standing there. They had received a report from a landlady in Pimlico. A young lady who lodged with her had failed to come home that night and had subsequently failed to arrive home the following morning. Solomon, his heart once again pounding, wondered aloud what this had to do with him. "Because," they said, "because the landlady assured us that the young lady was attending your..." Here the policeman checked his pad. "Magic show." Solomon assured them that he had performed a show but had no recollection of any young woman meeting her description. During this conversation, Solomon was sure to keep his hands by his sides and not to think of any thoughts of magic. Because that's what it was, right? Magic. Somehow, Solomon, for whom magic had lost its magic, was suddenly magic. You lied. You lied to the police, whispered Ellen, as if they were somehow still in earshot. Who would believe the truth? You don't believe it. Ellen looked at him. Go back to the theatre. It'll be closed. Search it from top to bottom. If you don't find anything, we will decide what to do together. Together? It's you and me, Sol. You and me. Always has been. Solomon held her tight. Ellen. A rock of certainty in this increasingly uncertain world. Like a school in the holidays, the theatre in the morning had a completely different atmosphere. Daylight in a place like this could wash away the magic. Solomon checked the understage area, the auditorium, the wings, the offices. What did he expect to find? A scrap of material like in a murder mystery, an address hurriedly scribbled in a matchbook? He found nothing. Back to the stage he went, the scene of the crime. Crime? Maybe. The stage was bare, pitch black. He tried to switch on the lights, but nothing happened. He carefully felt his way around in the near gloom, crawling on his hands and knees, but as he did so, he knelt on a nail. Its jagged tip plunging deep into his leg. He shrieked in pain. Then, almost as quickly, went quiet. He blinked his eyes in the darkness as he struggled to believe them. For glowing dimly and floating above the stage was a pretty hand, attached to a pretty girl, attached to a pretty everything else. There, but not there. Whether she was asleep or dead, he couldn't tell. He wept, fat tears of complicated emotion. Beatrice, he sobbed. Oh, Beatrice, where are you? I love you. If you come back, I'll promise I'll leave her. We'll run away. Come back. But as he reached out to touch her, she was gone. The vision of Beatrice, the girl whom he had apparently made disappear, floating above the stage, was too much for Solomon. Somehow he had acquired powers. The power to make someone disappear, the power to move objects with his mind, the power to destroy, and the power to summon visions. This was something real, and it was dangerous. That much was clear. Solomon could feel his mind loosening its grip on reality. Everything he knew was falling apart, all the certainties, uncertainties, black and white melting into a grey area, confusing his grey cells. He needed to go away, anywhere, somewhere. Ellen was waiting for him when he returned. Well, she said. Solomon did not reply. You have to talk to me. You're not going through this alone. We're a team, remember? I saw her, Ellen. Plain as day. He didn't mean that the girl was plain. She was, as we've already established, pretty. Well, that's wonderful. No! He thumped his fist on the table, and behind him a painting flew from the wall. Sol, calm down. I saw... I don't know what you call it. A mirage? An hallucination? Was it just in your mind? Isn't everything we see just a construction? How are we to know what's real and what's not real? He thumped his fist on the table again, and above them the light bulb exploded. Sol, I think you need to calm down. Calm down? I can't calm down, Ellen. Something's happened to me. Don't you get it? I can do things. I summoned a vision of Beatrice just like that. Beatrice? The girl. You know her name. How can you focus on Piffle when this is happening to me? What's next? I could step outside and fly. I'm not sure. Of course you're not sure. You've always hovered around the perimeter of magic, Ellen, tapping on the windows, afraid to come in. I've been in the spotlight for hour after hour. You were too afraid to try it, so you don't know what it's like. I do. I paid my dues, and I've been given a gift. A gift? I'm not sure it's a gift. Listen, you need to... Ellen was on the cusp of telling Solomon to calm down again, and it was definitely having the opposite effect. If you tell me to calm down again, your magic seems to be triggered by extremities in your humor. When you're out of control, so is your power, so please... I will not! Solomon was almost screaming with rage, his unbalanced mind fidgety and hot. Suddenly Ellen screamed, and in the next moment her apron caught fire. A sudden and violent blaze. Ellen! Solomon was terrified. Ellen grabbed a nearby vase and doused the flames. They quickly subsided. Solomon reached for his wife, frightened, unhinged. "Don't you touch me," she hissed, and ran upstairs. Solomon followed her swiftly, but too late. The bedroom door slammed in his face. "Ellen," he shouted, "go away. Just get out. I'm sorry." He really was. For everything. For the things she knew about and the things she didn't. "Please. I need you, Ellen." Silence for a moment. "I think you should leave." "No, let me in. Ellen," he roared and pounded on the door, furious, but then he stopped. He heard a peculiar sound, both quiet and loud at the same time. A smell like sulfur, a crackling light. He put his shoulder to the door and barged it open. After 2 attempts, the door gave way and Solomon was in, just in time to see a swirling spiral of smoke already dissipating. Solomon dashed to the window, locked. He tore the room apart. Ellen had disappeared. He howled at the universe for this curse, and as if by magic, and that now definitely seemed to be what was going on, all the books flew from the shelves, and at that moment there began a pounding at the front door. The police had returned, and this time they were not going to be fobbed off. Solomon did the only thing he could think of. He unlocked the window and made a break for it. The police officers soon saw him and gave chase. Solomon ran like he had never run before, past streets he knew, into streets he had never seen before, the police behind him and gaining on him. Solomon turned this way and that way, down streets that closed in on him, closely packed together so that he could barely see the sky. He could barely get his breath, his throat burning, and then a dead end. He was trapped. Before he could do anything, the police arrived, blocking the only way in or out of the street. Solomon felt frightened and furious, and this was a good thing, because that was when the magic happened. He turned to face the police. He held his hands out magically in front of him. "Stay back," he said. "I know magic." He felt the power crackle through his fingers. He waved his hands. He roared at the sky. He told the police he'd make them disappear. But he did nothing of the sort. Embarrassing. Solomon realized that the crackling in his fingers was either pins and needles or an oncoming heart attack. What it wasn't was magic. And in a matter of hours, poor old Solomon had been taken to Bethnal Green Asylum to be assessed. And by assessed, they meant locked up. Back in Solomon's bedroom, there was a click. A secret compartment in the wardrobe opened. Ellen climbed out. She removed the fire-retardant apron and folded it carefully to be disposed of later. She picked up one of the spring-loaded books. She'd already taken care of the other items, fishing line on the teacups, the falling stage lamp, the nails on the stage. Now to head to the theatre and release the girl. She had no need for her anymore. Solomon Seckerson was not magic at all. Everything that happened was of Ellen's construction. When she had found out that he was having an affair with the girl he used as a plant in the audience, she concocted this terrible retribution to curse a man who had fallen out of love with magic. She had rigged the house with tricks, rebuilt the magic cabinet to deliver the girl through the trapdoor to the space below the stage where she had kept her sedated, hidden behind a false wall. The vision had been created using her very own version of Pepper's ghost, the image of the girl reflected on a hidden pane of glass while she was hidden out of sight. Right at this moment, Beatrice would be waking up on the steps of her lodgings, unaware of anything that had happened. All this to gain revenge, and to take away Solomon's most precious possession, his mind. Remember that man in the straitjacket? You know his name now. This time, he's not on a stage, and there will be no escape. Because madness is the loss of everything, a prison without walls. And back at the Incubus Theatre, there is a new magician in town, Ellen Seckerson, who, after all these years, finally found the confidence to perform. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to disappear.